Hey folks, this is Kalani. Patch 9.1 has finally arrived on the public test realms, which means we have our first glimpse into what the first major content patch of the Shadowlands is going to look like. And right now, it looks like nerfs. Lots and lots of nerfs, mainly for the specs that have been dominating the PvE charts so far in Shadowlands and in the Castle Nathria raid specifically. You all know who I'm talking about, so let's break it all down and see what lies in store with this first round of class changes on the patch 9.1 PTR. Let's take a look at the Druid nerfs first. All of these nerfs are for balance, which probably doesn't surprise anyone, and there are a handful of buffs and changes to go alongside them. The new Moon talent now has a 20-second recharge, down from 25 seconds. That's a decent buff to a talent which sees practically no use right now, though I don't think a 5-second decrease in the recharge rate will really do much to shift the current meta, but changes to other talents at the same time might just do the trick. The Solstice talent has received a big nerf, now causes shooting stars to fall 200% more often at the start of an eclipse, down from 300%. Shooting stars wasn't a huge chunk of the overall damage profile for Moonkins, but it did double dip quite nicely with the balance of all things legendary effect to provide consistent damage over longer encounters, and it's the default pick on this talent row, so any nerfs here are sure to change things up, and we will just see less damage from shooting stars overall. The Stellar Drift talent has also been redesigned. Starfall damage increased by 25%. You can still cast and move while Starfall is active, but picking this talent will now also give Starfall a 15-second cooldown. So the damage increase to Starfall was buffed up from 15%, but you actually lose the additional 2 seconds for Starfall's duration, and Starfall gets a 15-second cooldown. That seems like a huge nerf for balanced Druids in any situation where they would want to keep Starfall up as much as possible, which is the vast majority of the time when you have multiple targets. If you pick this talent either for the Starfall damage increase or for the mobility factor, being able to cast while moving, you'll actually only be able to keep Starfall up for 50% of the time because it lasts for 8 seconds, and now you would have a 15-second cooldown. That also reduces your mobility as a caster because you won't have the 100% uptime on the casting while moving benefit of Stellar Drift. This might be one of the biggest blows to Balance Druid going forward because you either lose 50% uptime on Starfall, or you pick a different talent and lose the ability to cast while moving entirely, and you lose the bonus damage to Starfall. Neither of those options is ideal, so patch 9.1 is going to be quite interesting for Boomkin in general. As a small silver lining, the free Starfall from the Onus Clear Vision legendary power ignores the Stellar Drift talent Starfall cooldown, so that's kind of nice. At least you won't have to worry about double dipping on your cooldown there, and hey, you might even be able to get back to 100% uptime if you picked up this legendary. Speaking of legendary effects, the Balance of All Things has been nerfed yet again. It will now grant 24% increased crit strike chance, down from 40%, and decays at 3% per second, down from 8% per second. The initial crit buff has been slashed almost in half with this, which is definitely going to reduce the value of this legendary significantly. The buff will last longer overall though. It will decay at 3% per second over 8 seconds to get rid of the total 24% buff, instead of 8% per second over 5 seconds to get rid of the 40% buff. So the buff does technically last 3 seconds longer, meaning we have some extra amount of crit for 3 seconds longer than usual, but the total buff has been reduced by so much I don't actually think this legendary will be used very much, if at all, when patch 9.1 comes around. That does open the door for other legendary effects to take center stage, maybe even some of the newer legendaries that we're seeing in some of the patch 9.1 data mining, but as it stands right now, I'm pretty sure they just killed the Balance of All Things legendary, so it's probably a good time to start running Torghast again to save up some Soul Ash. Now, mages are also being targeted by the nerf bat this time around, and it should surprise no one that the spec being aimed at is fire. Fire mages have been doing incredibly well for themselves once again, but that might not continue into patch 9.1. First up, Flame Strike's damage has been reduced by 10%. Not too crazy, that's going to hurt their stacked AoE potential, obviously, but we've definitely seen worse nerfs come and go. The Flame Patch talent has also been nerfed by 10%, that's going to hit them in the exact same spot, so less stacked AoE damage for Fire Mages going into 9.1, but again, this could have been so much worse. But one of the nastier nerfs for Fire Mage is to their Kindling talent. This will now reduce the cooldown of combustion by 1 second, down from 1.5 seconds every time you crit with the appropriate abilities. That is a 50% reduced effectiveness on this talent, which was reducing the cooldown on Fire Mage's most important ability, Combustion. Fewer combustion windows will significantly reduce the overall damage output of a Fire Mage, which might give the other specs a chance to shine a little bit. Either way, Fire Mage won't be quite as strong in 9.1 if these changes make it through. As if that wasn't bad enough, the Infernal Cascade Conduit has also been nerfed. The fire damage bonus from casting Fire Blast has been reduced by 20%. That's going to compound with all of the other nerfs to reduce Fire Mage's overall damage by quite a bit. I wonder where all these nerfs will leave Fire Mages on the overall damage performance rankings. The Priests have made the list this time around as well, though they won't see quite as many changes. To start with, the Spirit Shell talent for Discipline has been nerfed yet again. Its cooldown has been increased to 90 seconds up from 60 seconds, so you won't be able to use it quite as often. Spirit Shell was incredibly strong for a 1 minute cooldown, so this doesn't surprise me at all, and at a minute and a half I'm sure Discipline will still be rocking the meters in the new raid in patch 9.1 regardless of this nerf. Holy Priests will see some love this time around as well. Nothing too major, but Symbol of Hope has been redesigned to offer your raid some extra utility. It will still regenerate 12% of your healer's mana over 5 seconds, so that's nice, but now it will also recover 60 seconds of a cooldown on a major defensive ability for your entire raid. Think about that for a second. That could be bubbles, bops, turtles, bark skins, rallying cries, shield walls, ice blocks, mirror images, survival instincts. 1 minute off the cooldown of a defensive for each member of your entire raid or group. That's actually insane and gives you one more reason to bring a Holy Priest to your raid or group activities. I can't wait to see what crazy shenanigans people can pull off with this new functionality. And then Shadow Priests will see a small nerf as well. Their Dissonant Echoes Conduit's effectiveness has been reduced. It now increases Void Bolt damage by 20% down from 35%. That's actually a pretty sizable nerf for one of the most used conduits for Shadow Priest. Hopefully we see some more changes to help offset that later on in the PTR cycle. And then the last class on the chopping block this time around is Warlock. This is definitely not a nice list for the Affliction Warlock mains, but we'll get through this together. Let's just tear the band-aid off, shall we? Malefic Rapture damage has been reduced by 18%. That's a bit ouchy right there. I'm kind of curious if these changes will go through this time though. They tried to nerf Affliction Warlocks in patch 905, I think it was, but the nerfs were quickly reverted because they would have decimated Affliction Warlocks overall damage. But here we are again with Malefic Rapture seeing a huge nerf. Maybe Chaos Bolts will actually start hitting harder than Malefic Rapture in 9.1. To offset some of that damage nerf, Agony damage has been increased by 20%. I don't think a 20% increase on Agony is going to make up for such a hefty nerf to Affliction Shard Spender, but more damage on dots is always going to be welcome. Another big change is to the Shadow Embrace debuff. It now lasts 16 seconds, up from 12 seconds, but it can now only be applied to one target at a time. This makes it much easier to keep your Shadow Embrace uptime at 100% on a priority target, but you can no longer multi-dot the debuff. This is a very interesting change to me because it directly affects multi-target damage potential, which might also be the reason why Starfall has been nerfed for Druids. Maybe they don't want us to be able to deal crazy amounts of damage to several targets at the same time. This change also makes Affliction easier to play somewhat because you no longer have to try to stack Shadow Embrace on multiple targets, and it's going to fall off less often on your priority target thanks to the duration increase. This change also makes target swapping more annoying for an Affliction Warlock because anytime they apply Shadow Embrace to an add or priority target, they'll actually lose that debuff on the boss. This change is going to be a love it or hate it deal for sure. But back to the nerfs. The focused malignancy conduit has also been knocked down a few pegs. In fact, its effectiveness has been reduced by 53%. Focused malignancy increased the damage of Malefic Rapture to any targets with unstable affliction, acting as a priority target damage increase. So not only has Malefic Rapture been nerfed, but its main damage boosting conduit has been slashed in half. Those are some nasty nerfs for sure. And then the last change Affliction has right now is to one of their legendary effects, Sacro Lash's Dark Strike. This legendary will now increase the damage of Corruption by 25%, up from 15%, and each time Corruption deals damage, it will extend the duration of your curses on the target by 2 seconds, but you will no longer get the movement speed reduction effect. That's definitely more of an interesting legendary effect now in my opinion, and it will make multi-dotting significantly easier, and your dots will last a lot longer. It's not all bad news though. Destruction Warlocks will see a very welcome buff. Chaos Bolt's damage has been increased by 10%. Not super crazy, but at least it's not a heaping round of nerfs. And then to round out the Warlock changes, the Dark Pact Talent's additional Absorb Shield has been increased by 216%. That is a massive buff if it actually goes through, and provides Warlocks with yet another super strong defensive cooldown and some different talent choices going into patch 9.1. And that's all of the big class changes we have so far in patch 9.1, but remember, this is only just on the public test realms. This is the very first build of 9.1. Things could change, nerfs could be reverted, and plenty more class changes are just around the corner, I'm sure. But what do you think of these top performing specs seeing such huge nerfs? Are there any other classes or specs you think need some nerfs, or maybe some big buffs? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to everyone who subscribed on Twitch. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.